Welcome to part two of me reading the Once Upon a Time book, aka my favorite show, so tune in with me. Okay, for anyone that is new here and didn't see my last video from yesterday, I basically, this is called Once Upon a Time Regina's Rising. And it was basically talking about Regina and her mother and how her mother uses magic to basically sometimes just to get what she wants instead of doing it the natural way, but she has magic. And so now we were talking about the serpent and the old man. So that's where I left off at. So I'm gonna start at a section I already kind of read. So the snake smiled slyly at the old man as his venomous fangs sank through the bread and deep into the man's palm. As the snake glided away, the man jumped up as best as he could on his old legs and soaked his hand in the cool waters of the brook, hoping to get relief from the pain. Soon enough, a fish spotted his wounded hand, and though the man thought it was just the water lapping at him, sucked and spat the poison out, leaving the man to live another day. Wow, that was really nice. Let me read through that again. Oh, a fish. Wow. The following morning, the old man returned to the brook with his basket of food. As had happened the previous day, the man offered the snake some bread. Again, the snake bit him. The man shuffled to the brook, dipped his throbbing hand into the water, where another fish sucked out the poison and saved his life. On the third morning, the snake said to the old man, "I don't know how you're still alive, but even more perplexing is why you keep feeding me when you know I'll bite you. I've done it before and I'll do it again. It's in my nature. It's what I do." The man pondered this for a moment before reaching in the basket, because he said, holding out a piece of bread for the snake, "This is what I do." I waited for my father to continue, but he just sat there smiling down at me. "Is that it?" I asked. "That's the end of the story," he confirmed, "but I don't understand it." His smile deepened and his eyes twinkled. "Someday, my child, you will." Okay, so that was the end of the story that Regina's father, Henry, was telling her. Friday, May 5th. A knock on the door startled me. It only had been a little over an hour since my mother had locked me in my room. That's right, so that's the last thing Cora did, was locked her in her room. Fearing the worst, I clambered to my feet. Wood scraped against wood. Ouch. The bolt had been lifted. I hated what I'd become, a pitiful creature who cowered when it came to my mother. For once, I wanted to have the courage to stand up to her. Alas, as long as she used her magic, she would always have the upper hand. Yeah, true. Cora just loves magic. "Come in, Mother." Again, "I'm very sorry." To my relief, it was my father. "Actually, it's me," he said. He entered, and with him came the sweet, earthy aroma of tobacco. He looked dapper in his scarlet coat, beige breeches, and knee-high riding boots. "Your mother said you may come down for tea now. She also wanted me to tell you your horse is in the stables, and Jessie is seeing to him as we speak." "Thank you, Daddy," I said as I brushed the wrinkles out of my blouse. I hoped he would ask what I've done to deserve being locked in my room, but he did not. To be honest, I wasn't surprised. He seldom inserted himself between my mother and me. and I oftentimes wondered if he was afraid of her too. I'm surprised she's granting me my freedom so quickly this time. Yeah, it is pretty quick that she's granting her freedom. You would think she would let her stay in there like a day or at least or the rest of the night. He blotted his forehead with his handkerchief and then tucked it into his breast pocket. Your mother's heart is in the right place. She only wants what is best for you, my child. Instead of meeting his gaze, I pulled open the drapes and peered out the window. The spring rains had given the hills a surreal lushness, a shade of green that rivaled the brightest of emeralds. I could only imagine how beautiful the flowers and the royal gardens looked. How was the hunt? I asked. You went with Gills this morning, isn't that correct? Gil Spencer was our nearest neighbor as well as the royal doctor. The foxes hoodwinked us again, my father confessed. Since today is the final day of the hunting season, I'm afraid we'll have to wait until November to salvage our reputations. Gil's hunting reputation isn't the one I would worry about if I were him, I said, and when my father sighed, I instantly regretted my insensitivity. He was my father's friend, so I should have done better to tolerate him, even if he had been passed out in some farmer's chicken coop the previous Saturday night. Since his wife and baby passed away, he isn't the same man. But when you've been friends for as long as we all have, we stick together through all the ups and downs, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad, the thick and the thin. I smiled at him as he blathered on, but deep inside I felt a pang of jealousy. Sure, I was sometimes bitter that my father chose to spend his mornings fox hunting with Gills rather than riding horses with me. But that wasn't it. It was something about the reverence with which he spoke about Gills, the way my father came to his defense without hesitation. It made me yearn for that kind of friendship myself. My father cleared his throat, making his Adam's apple bob against his cravat. You should hurry and change, child. Your mother is waiting. That's right, she still haven't had tea. Is something wrong with what I'm wearing? I gave myself a quick once over in the mirror. The day before, I shown up for tea with grass stains on my hemline and with a thick of her wrists, and my mother had used her magic to change me into a clean, starched dress, glaring at me as she did so. Of course, she's always putting her into like fancy clothes. I feel like Regina's not really like that. At least in the beginning, she wasn't like that, but this is weird. On second thought, perhaps I should quickly swap my riding pants and blouse for a frock straight from the lounge dress just to be sure. A guest will be joining you, he said. I turned back around to face him. Really? Who? He winked at me. It's a surprise. Now get ready and I'll be waiting to take you down, he said, and backed out of my room softly, closing the door. I heard him whistling a jolly little tune out in the hall. I slipped into a simple yet pretty dress and ran a brush through my long black hair. Before leaving my room, I checked my appearance in the mirror once more, wondering again who my mother had invited to tea. I knew better than to get my hopes up that it would be somebody I actually want to meet. Knowing my mother, I find her sitting across from the most pitiful old maid she could dig up. A threat to show me what would become of me. Sorry, lost real quick. Oh, if I didn't begin taking her quest for me to marry a royal prince or a king seriously. She even christened me with a name that meant queen. I heard her voice in my mind, saying it for the 1,000th time. I named you Regina, for one day you shall be queen. When I opened the door, my father nodded his approval of my attire. I followed him down the stairs. We passed my parents' wedding portrait, a life-size rendering that proved they made a striking couple when they were young. I paused to study their faces, something I often found myself doing. When I was a little girl, I seen in their eyes the look of true love, something I wish I, too, would find someday. Now that I was 16, however, I saw something more hidden deep in their expressions. The artist had authentically captured what they'd been thinking that day. I say, as a young prince, my father had appeared dutiful and proud, and as the newly crowned princess, my mother had a triumphant glimmer in her eye. My father had kept walking while I paused. Although he was balding and had thickened around his midriff in the 17 years since he posed for a wedding portrait, I still thought to him to be a handsome man. I took the stairs as quickly as possible to catch up with him. At the bottom, I accepted his elbow, and he dutiful, escorted me to the drawing room and then dismissed himself. Before entering, I took a calming breath, hoping my mother had improved. Yeah, right. All right, we made it to chapter 2. I don't know how many chapters is it, but okay. My mother sat at the head of the table, staring at her reflection in a silver spoon. She was impeccably dressed in a white blouse and a fitted midnight blue skirt. Her ears, chest, wrists, fingers dripped with some of the finest jewels in the kingdom. It's about time you graced us with your attendance, Regina. She placed the spoon on the lacy tablecloth. We were about to start without you. I winced, weighing whether it would have pleased her and I been on time, but my writing closed in the conclusion of my brief inner debate. I figured she would not have been satisfied no matter what I've done. True. I think I'm going to stop here, just right here. So I will pick up again, and it's basically they're at their dinner scene. Thanks for tuning in.